The Dollhouse of Despair. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe. Nina always loved dollhouses. From a young age, her grandmother gifted her an intricately crafted dollhouse that had been passed down through generations. The miniature rooms fascinated her, and she spent countless hours arranging the tiny furniture, creating stories for the little inhabitants. But as she grew older, her obsession with the dollhouse took a sinister turn. One chilly autumn day, Nina discovered an old, dusty dollhouse in the attic of her grandmother's house. It was unlike any she had seen before, with delicate porcelain dolls that had faces frozen in expressions of sheer terror. The furniture was exquisite, but it had an air of malevolence about it. Nina couldn't resist bringing it down to her room. As she placed it on her bedroom shelf, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The dolls seemed to watch her every move with their unblinking, fearful eyes. Night after night, Nina would hear eerie, whispered conversations coming from the dollhouse when she knew she was alone in her room. The little dolls appeared to be plotting something, and their sinister laughter haunted her dreams. One evening, she peered into the dollhouse and saw one of the porcelain dolls had vanished. Its empty space was filled with tiny crimson handprints. Panic surged through Nina, but she couldn't bring herself to tell anyone. She was convinced that no one would believe her, so she decided to investigate on her own. Late one night, with trembling hands, she opened the dollhouse. Inside, the dolls had rearranged themselves into a gruesome tableau. The missing doll was placed on a miniature guillotine, its porcelain head severed from its body, and surrounded by the others, who watched in silent horror. The sight made Nina gasp in terror. From that moment on, she couldn't escape the dollhouse's sinister influence. The dolls whispered to her in her sleep, urging her to do unspeakable things. They told her to steal her mother's jewelry, to break her grandmother's heirlooms, and worse. The dark compulsion grew stronger each day until Nina felt like a mere puppet in the hands of malevolent forces. In the darkest corner of her room, she created a tiny torture chamber in the dollhouse, complete with miniature chains and gruesome devices. She couldn't stop herself, as if some invisible presence was pushing her to commit horrifying acts. Her room became a nightmare, with the dollhouse at its center, radiating a palpable evil. One evening, after a particularly disturbing whisper from the dolls, Nina knew she had to break free from their influence. She grabbed the dollhouse and rushed to the backyard, desperate to rid herself of the curse. But as she hurled the dollhouse into the blazing bonfire, the dolls' screams of terror echoed in the night. The dollhouse burned, but instead of turning to ash, the porcelain dolls emerged from the flames unscathed. Their eyes blazed with hatred, and they began to march toward Nina, their tiny, porcelain hands reaching out to her. She screamed as the tiny figures overtook her, their cold, porcelain fingers digging into her flesh. When her family discovered her the next morning, they found Nina's lifeless body, her skin covered in tiny, bloody scratches, and her face etched with terror. The dollhouse lay in the ashes, its evil finally extinguished. It had claimed its last victim. Years later, the dollhouse found a new home and the cycle of horror continued. Those who entered its sinister world never escaped its grasp, as the malevolent dolls waited patiently to fulfill their wicked desires. And so, the Dollhouse of Despair continued its reign of terror, hidden away in plain sight, waiting for its next unsuspecting victim to fall under its cursed spell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like and subscribe.